Shana Tova, friends. It's good to be together. Tonight, I want to speak with you about Zoom. Yes, Zoom. Not the Zoom we've all grown accustomed to these past months. Rather, I want to speak with you about the other Zoom, the beautifully illustrated, wordless children's book, drawn by the Hungarian illustrator István Bányai. Before I talk about Zoom the book, allow me to show you a quick view of its drawings, as a picture can tell 1,000 words. What did that have to do with Rosh Hashanah? Perhaps you're thinking, all this safer at home stuff is really getting to Rabbi Ruthie. Well, Zoom the picture book has everything to do with Rosh Hashanah and our lives. The pictures show us that sometimes we live life close up, and our perspective allows us to see just the rooster's cone in front of us. And sometimes we live life from a more distant perspective, one with a much bigger context and time frame. Rosh Hashanah, like Bányai's Zoom, deals beautifully with perspective and invites us to zoom in and out of our lives. And our perspective can have everything to do with hope and despair and hope. These past 6 months have been very, very challenging and emotionally difficult, both for our congregation and our world at large. As many of you have shared with me, worlds have been turned upside down. We have had to limit physical contact with our friends and our families, and even our beloved grandchildren. Highly anticipated and long-planned for trips have been canceled and at best indefinitely delayed. Even worse, some of us are feeling the detrimental effects of loneliness, isolation, and high levels of anxiety. Many of us are dealing with financial insecurity and fear of becoming ill ourselves. In our own SOS community, some of us have experienced at a distance the death of a loved one and have had to mourn them at a distance as well. In the world at large, alcoholism, suicide, and domestic violence are on the rise. We have lost a lot. We have missed a lot. We need to grieve what we miss and what we have lost. And yet, if we only zoom into today, or metaphorically zoom into the cone of the rooster, It would be easy to give in to despair. And some days I do. Perhaps you do as well. Yet we mustn't stop there. No. To quote Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, I love saying the word Rabbi and Lord together, to be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world serially threatened by despair. Every ritual, every mitzvah, every syllable of the Jewish story, every element of Jewish law is a protest against escapism, resignation, or the blind acceptance of fate. The whole of Judaism, teaches Rabbi Lord Sacks, is a set of laws and narratives designed to create in a people, in families, in communities, and a nation habits that defeat despair. Friends, this is very powerful stuff. Rabbi Sacks is teaching us that Jewish rituals are a protest against escapism and designed to create in us habits that defeat despair. What does that mean? Rather than only escaping into Netflix and a bottle of wine, which I do some evenings, Judaism offers life-affirming, hope-inducing rituals and responsibilities. Especially at times like ours, Judaism's rituals are a first aid kit for our souls. Judaism invites us to make 100 blessings each day. Talk about cultivating an attitude of gratitude. Judaism invites us to gather as a community to welcome the Sabbath and to make the Sabbath, regardless of what else may be happening. It is a mitzvah, a sacred obligation to be joyous at least one day each week. Judaism asks us to visit the sick, to comfort the mourner, and support the needy among us. Could be virtually or in person. Lightening another's load you may have experienced can lighten our own sense of despair. Friends, no matter what else may be going on in our lives, Judaism invites us to collectively celebrate our many holy days. L'chaim is the Jewish motto. And as we begin 5781, I invite you to pick up and open the spiritual first aid kit called Judaism. Rabbi Sacks also wrote, every syllable of our Jewish narrative is a protest against resignation or a blind acceptance of fate. I find inspiration and comfort in recalling the creativity and adaptability of our people in the face of obstacles and unprecedented times. Our Jewish history is not just about surviving, but about thriving. Please zoom out with me and consider just one example from our Jewish history. Some 2,000 years ago, the Jewish people lived in the land of Israel and would congregate in Jerusalem at the Holy Temple. This was the place we brought sacrifices and heard our Torah read. This was the place we drew close to God. Then, in 70 CE, the Jewish people were exiled from the Holy Land, and our holy temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. An exile that lasted 2,000 years. Talk about despair, Talk about a disaster. Did the exile and destruction mean the end of Judaism or the Jewish people? No, an emphatic no. As individuals and as a community, we adapted. Our forefathers and foremothers went from being farmers to being merchants, doctors, tailors, and silversmiths. Shortly after the exile, our rabbis, responding to the times they found themselves in, reinvented Judaism. Wanting to still celebrate Passover, the rabbis created the Passover Seder. And by doing so, our rabbis created a portable Judaism in which the lessons of freedom could be taught in every Jewish home. In our time, some 2,000 years later, since that exile, the Passover Seder has become the most celebrated and beloved Jewish holiday. I'm sure at first, the home Passover Seder felt strange and awkward, kind of like Zooming high holiday services. Yet, through creativity and resilience, our people's central teachings persevered. Similarly, after that exile, the rabbis created one of the greatest works of Judaism, the Babylonian Talmud. The Talmud's 38 volumes have been studied by thousands and thousands of Jews over many generations. And I'm sure at first, sitting around, analyzing and discussing texts as a way of expressing Jewish identity and discerning God's will didn't feel as good as gathering together in Jerusalem over an altar. Yet one day, all of that discussing of text not only would make for great Jewish lawyers, but also would create a people that can think critically and value divergent viewpoints. It also created a people that could thrive in lands throughout the world. But the rabbis of 70 CE could not have known any of that. Friends, when we zoom out and see our lives within the context of a much larger and longer narrative, our despair can dissipate and morph into hope, into the possibility of new paths. And sometimes those new paths are not immediately clear, not immediately in front of us. Yet, if we believe in the possibility of a better tomorrow, we can do the work to create that better tomorrow. A tomorrow that might look very, very different, but that is still beautiful, meaningful, and life-affirming. I'd like to end with a return to Zoom, this time the teleconferencing software, and share another short video, a video of a group of Israelis, religious, secular, old, young, Ashkenaz, Sephardi, singing Hatikva, the hope. And I'm pretty sure that when Naftali Imbar, a Ukrainian Jew, wrote these words in 1878, he had no idea that his hope and yearning for a Jewish people living in its land would come true one day. And I'm sure he never imagined it would look like this. Yet Naftali Imber kept hope alive.
Yehudi,
Friends, as we enter this new year, 5781, at this time of unprecedented challenges, let's remember we are part of a people who has not always known what the future held, but who joined together as a community, century after century, and chose hope, creativity, and adaptability. That is our history. That is our legacy. It is inspiring. It is an inspiring one that I urge us to share with our children and grandchildren. During these 10 days of awe, I invite you to open up our new beautiful prayer books and read a little from them each day. I also invite you to revisit the first aid kit for your soul, the kit called Judaism. If you engage with Judaism and its wise, sacred rituals, I believe your soul will be nurtured and a life-affirming attitude of gratitude and hopefulness might just bloom. Kain Yehi Ratzon. May it be so.